Okay, there we go. And share screen, share, pull up my notes. Okay, thank you everyone for jumping onto the ExtraWish Applicant Orientation 2020. My name is Mindy Cow, and I'm a program associate here at the Community Foundation. I'm very excited to be working with a few of my colleagues to administer the ExtraWish program this year. It's a really important, really fun piece of work that we do for our donors and for nonprofits in our region. So yes, just excited to be here and excited to take your questions today and make sure that your application process goes as smoothly and we provide as much clarity as possible. A few housekeeping notes regarding Zoom. Please note that this presentation is being recorded. So if you know someone that wanted to join or you missed something while I was talking, you will be able to go back and access the recording at a later date, and it will be placed on the ExtraWish webpage. Number two, please mute your microphones during the presentation. I think most of you are muted, but if everyone could just double check. I think earlier I heard some people typing, so yeah, if you could just make sure you're muted, that would be much appreciated. Number three, feel free to ask questions in the chat throughout the presentation. If I don't see it or if I don't get to it in the middle of the presentation, know that there will be a Q&A at the end, during which I will scroll through all questions and make sure any unanswered questions are answered. And that is it for now. Okay, so I am going to start by going into just a little bit of background. So if this is your first time applying to something with the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta, know that it's our mission to inspire and lead philanthropy that increases the vitality of our region and the well-being of all residents. Our region being the 23 county metro Atlanta region, and we do this primarily through our portfolio of over 900 donors. We act as the GPS for their philanthropic interests, which is an exciting job that we have. So last year, 2019, we began exploring a new framework for how we do our grant making and community leadership work. We're calling it the Equity of Opportunity Architecture, and it's largely grounded in these three pillars which aim to increase economic and social mobility in our 23 county region. So within these three pillars, if you're wondering what they're all about, Prosperous People is focused on educational and vocational pathways for individuals. And I will go into more detail about what that means in the next slide. But Strong Families is focused on supporting families of all shapes and sizes to live healthy, fulfilled lives. And lastly, Thriving Communities is about a commitment to strengthening civic voice while also increasing access to housing, transportation, and environmental justice. So if you are very familiar with CFGA, you may remember the impact areas in which we've shaped our work for the previous 3 years. This is sort of the next evolution of how we are framing our work, is within these pillars and pathways. So when we talk about prosperous people and education and vocation, we're really talking about early childhood education, K through 12 education, post-secondary education, and alternative pathways to a quality career. So that can include if you are working areas or providing programs related to workforce development. In the Strong Families pillar, we are focused on providing quality physical, mental, and behavioral health, quality parenting, quality youth development. And then the area of thriving communities, like I had kind of spoke about just previously, really focused on the topics of affordable housing, community and civic engagement, environmental justice, and transportation access. And if you have more questions about the specific of these pillars, you can find information on our webpage. There's a good bit of information there. And if you want to dive even deeper, we have some really smart program officers, 3 that are focused on these different areas. But that is all the background I'm going to provide for now. Now I'm going to talk about the ExtraWish program. So ExtraWish, as a service to our donors as well as the nonprofits in our region, we publish the ExtraWish catalog as a way to share the special needs of nonprofits in our region. So one of the things that I want to tell you today is we made a special change this year to ExtraWish, in that it used to be that we would only feature nonprofits who had gone through one of our discretionary grant making programs in the past. In order to be eligible, you had to have gone through and applied to another one of our programs. We removed that criteria, however, because we wanted to ensure that more organizations in our region, ones that aren't necessarily on our radar, had access to this opportunity. So that is no longer a requirement. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about eligibility. So first of all, when it comes to the organizations that we are considering, we do require that you provide programs and or services that align with one of the following areas. So one area is that entire equity of opportunity architecture. You must align with one of those 10 pathways. And just know that this is not based on the mission of your organization, but really the program or service that you are providing. So, you may be an organization that primarily serves immigrants, but you have a program that provides housing specifically for immigrants. That would be eligible for ExtraWish. And then 2 other areas that we always include is animal welfare and arts. These are 2 areas that a good portion of our donors are very passionate about. And so we do try to make those opportunities available to them as well. So continuing on the eligibility of organizations, we require that you have not been featured in ExtraWish last year. So if you were in the 2019 catalog, I am sorry to inform you that we cannot include you in the 2020 catalog. This is all part of our effort to make sure that we are featuring organizations that our donors may not have seen, and trying to be fair and sort of spread the opportunity as much as we can. We also require that you are located in and providing services within the Foundation's 23 county region. Our specialty is highlighting and supporting organizations in our region, so that's very important to us. You must be classified by the IRS as a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We do ask that you have at least a 1-year operating history from the point of receiving your 501c3 to now. And then lastly, you must have annual operating expenses greater than $25,000. So those are all the eligibility requirements for an organization that wants to apply. So if you meet those requirements, then you are ready to consider what sort of requests do I need to ask in order to be eligible. So for an ExtraWish request, your request must fall within one of these 3 areas. So you can ask for items that support your programs, and here are some examples. We've supported medical supplies in the past, recreational equipment, educational materials, toys. We've also supported operational items, so things that help staff conduct their role, office supplies, technology equipment, furniture, kitchen appliances. We know that these are important things for an organization to function as well. And then lastly, services. We also consider consultants, contract or labor expenses for specific time-bound projects. So we have really supported a wide range of different things through ExtraWish, or I should say supported, but we've featured a wide range of different requests. So I would really recommend that if you have something in mind and you're wondering if it's an eligible request, of course you can always email and ask us, but I would also recommend that you refer to past catalogs and look at what we have featured in the past for more ideas. And the 2019 catalog is linked on the ExtraWish webpage, so you can look at it there. Okay, next, more eligibility requirements regarding the request. So we cap each request at $5,000, and this is largely based on, our history of running this program and seeing what donors typically, the level at which donors typically fund a request. So we cap it at $5,000, but that's your total request, not a single item, but all the items added together. Second, we ask that you ask for no more than 3 unique items. So you can ask for 20 chairs, 20 tables, and 20 spoons. That counts as 3 unique items, but you can't ask for chair, table, spoon, fork, knife. That would exceed the 3 unique item eligibility requirement. And of course, part of the application process is completing the organizational profile and the ExtraWish grant application, and you must fully complete every field. Applications in which fields are skipped, required fields are skipped, will be deemed ineligible. So I'm guessing several of you on this call have already read through our guidelines. This list of ineligible requests matches exactly what's in those guidelines. And so these are just a whole host of different things that we will not consider for ExtraWish requests. So if it's something that you already have and you're trying to maybe get reimbursed for it in some sort of way, that's not something we're willing to consider. Any item that costs over $5,000 obviously does not meet that $5,000 cap. Vehicles, gas for organizational fleets, subscriptions, memberships, fees, attendance fees for conferences and trainings for staff. We don't do stipends, we don't do general operating support or endowments. And hopefully that makes sense, because with ExtraWish, we're really focused on more tangible items. Okay, I'm going to see really quickly if I can, nope, okay. I can't see the chat right now because I'm in presentation mode. So I apologize if you're really wanting your question answered right now, but I will get to it in the end.
Mindy, would you like me to pose questions to you? There's just one now.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure, if there's just one.
Someone asked about, can personal protective equipment be included in the request?
Yes, absolutely. I think that is a tangible item that fits with it. I'm assuming whoever asked that has a program in which they're providing PPE. And so, yes, absolutely, that would be an eligible request.
And one other related question, will there be a preference for COVID-19 related requests?
We will, let's revisit that question after this next slide about tips for a successful request. Okay, so I'm going to try to answer that question once I go through this. So we always recommend 3 things for applicants to consider when applying is around the timeliness of your request. So keep in mind that donor funding of your request typically doesn't hit your own account until Q1, right? It all depends on when the donor makes the decision and confirms with CFGA, yes, this is a request that I want to fulfill. So please factor this into your request. You know, if you don't center your request around the holidays because funding would not, it could hit you by Christmas or Hanukkah, but may not. So keep that in mind. 2, detail. Oftentimes in applications, we ask you to keep it sweet and short, but in this particular case, we do have a word limit, I believe, but with the space provided, we really want you to include as much detail as possible about your requests. We have writers on our team that take the content that you provide and pose it to our donors. And so the more detail that you can provide, the richer detail that you can provide about your requests, the better and the easier job for our writers. And 3rd, think about how your request is unique and compelling. That is sort of the most important factor that we use when we're reviewing requests is it compelling? How is it advancing your mission? And so to the question about whether there will be a focus on COVID-19, and internal discussions about ExtraWish, we are certainly anticipating a lot of requests related to COVID-19 because that has just been such a monumental factor impacting nonprofits across the board. And I think it gets to this compelling factor. So if COVID-19 plays a role within your request, we want you to talk about that in your application and build it out in that sort of compelling way. Well, yeah, one other thing that I'll mention is one thing that we do have an eye towards this year is that we've been paying very close attention to GCN's reports about nonprofit needs. And one of the things that we hear about often is the technology needs of nonprofits and, you know, how we're all forced to work from home. And so this is something that we're just keeping an eye out for and certainly anticipating. Because again, we do think that's something that is compelling. But completely up to you, your organization's needs, what is compelling for your organization at the end of the day. That's what we want you to include in your request. Is there anything else, Kathleen, that I'm missing in terms of questions?
The questions that have come through have been about the timing.
Okay.
mentioned about Q1. And so I had shared in the chat that the book is sent to our donors in late November. And so oftentimes wishes won't be fulfilled until January, February, March, even April. So I think that gets to that question about timing.
Okay.
No,
Great.
there will be a Q&A at the end where folks can specify.
Awesome. Alrighty then. So how to apply? We try to keep this really short and simple. Of course, we ask you to review the 2020 guidelines just to make sure that you're eligible. We hate for anyone to apply only for us to have to turn them away because they weren't eligible. So please review those guidelines when you have a chance. Second, complete your organizational profile. You do this by logging on to our nonprofit online portal, which can be accessed through our webpage. If speaking to those organizations very familiar with the Community Foundation, you might notice that we are no longer requiring the common grant application, which is also a portion of our portal, and that is on purpose. So know that, if you're asking questions, well, do I really have to do both? The answer is no. You just have to complete your organizational profile. And then lastly, we ask you complete an ExtraWish grant application. That link is also on the ExtraWish webpage. You complete it via Survey Gizmo. And just as an FYI, the final question within that application is a high resolution picture. So be thinking about what kind of picture you would want to submit, because usually these are the pictures that we use for the catalog. I think every now and then we might reach back out to you for pictures, but we try not to do that. We try to, keep it contained to this process so we're not bugging you all the time. And the deadline to do all of this is noon on Wednesday, September 2nd. So yeah, we have about 3 weeks till the deadline. So if you're wondering what the full timeline scope is, like I said, the application is due Wednesday, September 2nd at noon. You will be notified of selections or declinations by Wednesday, September 16th. The catalog is then distributed to our donors and published on our webpage November 11th. And we allow donors to reach out to us about their desire to fulfill a wish on an ongoing basis. We never say you have to get your extra wish request in by this date or else we're just canceling it. No, we typically keep it open. So after a donor selects a wish to fulfill, they'll usually pick up the phone or email their philanthropic officer at the Community Foundation. And then we work with our finance and accounting team to make sure the check goes to your organization and you have the proper information to know that this is a check specifically for the request that you made through ExtraWish. So there are also reporting requirements after your wish is fulfilled. We ask that you submit a report within 60 days of having your wish fulfilled. And this is typically a simple form that asks about what impact has this particular item or service had on your organization. We ask that you submit a copy, just proof of purchase, documentation, and then a high-res photograph of the item purchased. And this really helps us in building our own sort of storytelling around the impact of ExtraWish back to our donors. So sometimes it will happen that a wish is only partially funded for a period of time. And so just know that if you get in that situation, we will work with you to delay reporting or time the reporting in such a way that makes sense for you and your organization in terms of, you know, when you can actually go through with purchasing the requested item. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to my two colleagues, Sybil and Kathleen. They work closely with our donors, and they're going to provide you with a little bit more insight on how, you know, they think and operate.
Great. I'm just going to move the chat out of my, it's covering my thing right now. So Mindy, maybe now you can see the chat because a couple questions have come in, but if not, no, we'll make sure we get to all the questions, don't worry.
I can follow up with the questions if they pop up. So
okay, great. So hi everyone, I'm Kathleen Wagner. I'm a senior philanthropic officer at the Community Foundation. And like Mindy mentioned, Sybil and I, and I'll let Sybil introduce herself, but we work on the philanthropy team at the foundation. So we work directly with those donors and their donor advised funds. So it is my job at the foundation when a donor shares what they're interested in philanthropically, whether it's, you know, homelessness or feeding programs or healthcare or what have you, to help kind of match make them to nonprofits in the community. So ExtraWish is a really fun program that we put out. It usually gets, well, before I talk about ExtraWish, let me let Sybil introduce herself.
my name is Sybil Eli, and I am the philanthropy administrative assistant. And most of my, well, going through this process is a lot of fun, as both Kathleen and Mindy said. And I primarily help with recording the gifts as they come in and making sure that they get to all the wonderful nonprofits that are in the book.
So like Mindy mentioned, just a little bit of overview about the booklet. The book is mailed to our donors in late November. And this has varied over the years, but traditionally there are about 25 wishes included in the book every year. And so, you know, everybody that's eligible will not necessarily be selected. And I think that's just important for folks to know coming in. And so Sybil and Mindy and myself and a team at the foundation, when vetting wishes, tried to, of course, include a diverse array of organizations and services provided, but also, excuse me, also a diverse, you know, array of wishes. Someone had talked about this in the chat, I think, and in previous years it's come up with things like MARTA cards or, you know, even laptops and technology requests. We can't do all 25 wishes of the same item, or we traditionally haven't done that. And so, can you all hear me? I just got a pop-up, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. But so traditionally, we do try to include a wide array of wishes and items in the book. Things that tend to get funded really quickly are often things that directly relate to a donor's interests. So really tangible things like tennis shoes for a kid's running program, or bags to provide meals to homeless families. I'm making this up, but tangible things. In the past, you know, we had featured a ball for the elephants, like a recreational ball for elephants at the zoo. And so things that are really creative, oftentimes bring joy to the donors and get funded quickly. But that isn't to say that, you know, things that nonprofits greatly need for their programming shouldn't be included. I'll hand it over to Sybil so that she can add any other thoughts there.
No, I think, Kathleen, you really covered just about everything. And like she said, the more unique you can be, the more fun it is, I think, for donors. But we've had a number of organizations that provide socks and shoes and shirts and, you know, personal items for some of the clientele that they serve. So those are just as important. And as Kathleen said, we want to make sure that we stress that if those are your needs, you don't have to try so hard to be so unique. But if you do have cool things, that really catches the eyes of our donors as well.
I think my audio was going in and out, so I'll pause there and jump back into the chat. Mindy, if you want to take over.
I am trying to flip the slide. There we go. Do you all want to talk about partial, whole, multiple funding?
Sure. So oftentimes what happens is nonprofits typically request things close to, or, you know, it doesn't have to be close to $5,000. If you have one thing you need and you know it costs $2,500, don't hesitate to put that one thing in the book. But oftentimes donors will fund multiple items, but they may only do a portion of each one. So you may not get all of the funding at once. A donor could say, I want to do $500 for the backpacks and $500 for the cleaning supplies. And so you may get your ExtraWish funding in multiple, you know, batches.
And then this other part, I think you all got to in pretty good detail. So yeah, that brings us to our Q&A period. And I am scrolling through the chat now. I did figure out how to pull it up. And so let's go through these questions and make sure that all the questions are answered. I think this is a Kathleen Sybil question. How often does an item make it into the catalog and not get funded?
That's really hard to say because, again, the choices are made by the donors and we just don't know what compels them. It happens, it does, but you know, to give a frequency, I don't think we could. What do you think, Kathleen?
Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm getting a notification that my speaker's not working, and I see that in the chat as well. But yeah, typically most of the book gets funded. We try really hard to fund the entire book. But there are occasions when wishes do not get funded. And you know, that's an unfortunate case when it happens, but it does happen.
Also, the information that we require once you receive your wishes granted, sometimes that's shared with the donor. So the pictures are great, like the more the merrier, because they like to see those things in the end. Especially those unique gifts, or if there's a client that's received something that they were looking forward to, that we like to share those with the donors.
Okay, another question. What if 6 months from now you find other funding and fulfill the request, then one of your donors fund it? I can take this question, as I think I know what happens with Kathleen. I know you have a lot of experience with managing these situations, if you want to
Go ahead.
take that one. Oh, okay. This has happened in the past before. I think we would just highly encourage you to, so what happens when that happens is if you come back to us and say, hey, we actually already bought this thing, then we will go back to our donors, let them know that you already have the item. And typically I think that we ask them something along the lines of like, can the funds be used in a different way? But we'd really prefer not to have to do that because they certainly get excited about, you know, being able to support what's featured in the booklet. So we try not to have to turn around and tell them that. Is that about right, Kathleen?
Yeah.
What happens in that situation? Okay.
If it happens, and if it's, you know, if it is 6 months later, like I said, we try to get most of the book funded by March or so. But if it is 6 months later that a wish gets funded, I think, you know, then maybe it's more likely for us to say, your wish has been funded. And you said, oh, we already bought that because it had been so long. Then for that rare occasion, I think it's fine for us to, we'll go back to the donor and say, this has been funded. Would you be interested in funding X at the nonprofit? There was another.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if that happens and you do have something else, there's something specific, and you're able to tell us that before we call the donor, that's helpful too. Because sometimes they want to know what else do they have. And so if your wish is granted and you give us a call, and you have something else in mind, that's helpful.
Okay. Another question. I've applied for another grant from the Community Foundation. Can I still apply for ExtraWish? The answer is yes. Applying for another one of our programs does not preclude you from being eligible for ExtraWish. Is there a way to save an application in progress on Survey Gizmo? Stephanie, unfortunately not. Unfortunately, we do not have that super fancy version of Survey Gizmo. But I can tell you what I can do is send a PDF version. Oh shoot, I didn't include my email. I'm gonna enter my email. And if you shoot me an email, I will send you a PDF version so that you can view every question in the application, work on your answers, and then jump onto Survey Gizmo, copy and paste. So I can't believe I forgot my email address. But, okay, I just messaged it, and so yes. If it is easier for you to see all those questions at once, please send me an email and I will send you a PDF version of the application. Okay, will there be a common grant opening period this year? I believe that is in reference to a different grant opportunity. So we would have to connect, I think, one-on-one on that. Yeah, I'm gonna move on to the next question. Are all eligible grant requests included in ExtraWish or only a certain number? We do cap it at a certain number. Well, I guess I would say it's more of a range, but rarely are we able to include all requests in the booklet, unfortunately. So do we think that we're going to get requests for 50 requests for masks? How would that affect what goes in your catalog? I don't know about 50 requests for masks. For instance, would a health organization requesting masks be more compelling than a homeless shelter asking for masks? I I can answer that question about whether a health organization would be more or less compelling than an organization that acts as a homeless shelter.
It really
Yeah.
depends on the donor. Because I think one year we had multiple organizations requesting MARTA cards, and there was a preference for one organization over the other. So it's not, we can't answer that, unfortunately. It really just depends on what the donor is compelled by.
Yeah. I would say it's also about how the request is framed in terms of, how the request is framed. Kathleen?
Yeah, I was just going to add, because in previous years, while there weren't great needs by every nonprofit for masks and things like that, there have been needs for tangent MARTA cards. And so we had talked about, it's unfortunate that we can't include everybody that needs MARTA cards, but we do have a little bit of flexibility in how we present that to donors. So I think if we get 50 requests for masks, it does show us what the need is in the community. And so I don't think it's necessarily something that would exclude all 50 of those organizations because they all ask for the same thing. I think it tells a really interesting story about what the needs are right now. And so maybe there's a way to talk about that in a different way in the booklet. So we're just going to have to see when the wishes come through, how we're able to organize it. So I would encourage nonprofits here on this call and anybody else that watches the recording to really think about what are those tangible things that you need now and you envision needing in the next 6 months through the first quarter, like Mindy said, and just be really honest with what your needs are, because that's going to be the most compelling to donors.
Okay. Is something ineligible if it's been purchased already, but there's a need for additional items? For example, if your organization has some computers but needs more. Yes, that is eligible. ExtraWish, I don't think weighs completely new items against the need for additional items. So yeah, I would say if it's additional items that you need, then put that in your request. Let's see. Yes, okay, I think we got to this question, define Q1. We are referring to Q1 as January, March of 2021. Since programs have gone virtual and we mail our project kits to participants, can we request funding for this expense? So I would say you can request funding for the kits, yes, which is what I think you were asking. Okay, so at this point, I think I've gotten to all of this. Now I'm scrolling back down to the bottom to go through more questions. With internet access being an issue, are hotspots for the community allowable? Yes, I think that is a very compelling request, knowing what we know about lack of access to the internet in our region. Absolutely. Okay. Although the Common Grant application is not required for ExtraWish, will Common Grants already, I'm assuming, Deanna, you meant, will Common Grant application already in the system be reviewed to assist in determining which organizations are funded? So no, to keep the review process as fair as possible, we will only be considering organizational profile. Besides a compelling ask, how is it determined who is included in the catalog? Are you looking for a certain number of requests / organizations that fit your 10 pillars? Yeah, from I think a foundation insider standpoint, that would certainly be the ideal, to have a broad spread across our pillars. But I think the reality is that we never know what to expect. And sometimes we might see, 50% health requests weighed against only one request for assistance in housing or something like that. And so that's certainly something that we take into account. And so, no, I guess another way to think of it is we have not committed to saying we're going to do 3 within each of the 10 pathways. We just don't know that at this point. And it's largely based on the mix of the applications that we get. Anything to add there, Kathleen, Sybil?
No, I think that's right.
Okay. Okay, could you explain in more detail the distinction between a stipend, which is not eligible, versus a service, which is an eligible request? And then also, is dependent on staff versus contractor? So with a stipend, we largely think about the stipend in terms of, I don't want to use, what's the word that I want to use? Something that shows thanks to a volunteer or someone who's added value to your organization, a small payment, somewhat like an honorarium, or, say you have a program participant and you want to make sure that the cost of transportation to your program, the cost of housing, if housing was a cost associated with being a part of your program, that a stipend would cover those costs. So, so that sort of payment would not be eligible. Because I think another way we think of it is that that's a cash exchange, largely. And then with a service, if you can frame the service and how it impacts a particular program or project, how it advances a program or project, that is what we're looking for with the service. Kathleen, do you have an example in mind? Sorry to put you on the spot, but of a service that we've funded in the past?
The only thing I was thinking, and it still had a tangible component, was like for nonprofits who in the past have done meal delivery programs. But some of the requests have still always been a tangible need in relation to that program. So I can't actually think, I've been here for the last 6 ExtraWish cycles, and I can't think of a service that's been funded.
I can't either. Even like you said, there is always that tangible piece that links to whatever service. So I'm not quite sure that there has been.
Okay. So if, Olivia, if that was unclear, we can certainly go back to other staff and see what the distinction and definition between that is, and try to get you more clarity.
She had mentioned later in the chat that they were thinking about a contractor to create a piece of music for dance students.
Oh, okay. Yes. So yeah, in full transparency, this is my first year administering this program, so I would need to go back and ask people with a little bit more historical knowledge, perhaps. But that sounds like a very cool project, and I would want to make sure that I got good clarity on that before, giving you a final answer. So email me, please, and I will work on getting you a better answer. Okay, how many wishes will be included in the book? Kathleen, Sybil?
Yeah,
Wishes or orgs? I mean, organizations, we're sticking with around 25. And so, you can have up to 3 wishes that don't exceed $5,000.
right. So usually it's 25 organizations. Last year it was 30. So there is a little bit of flexibility there, but I think we would never go over 30. That's just can be a little overwhelming. And if it's okay, someone had just asked how many applications do we receive in a year? And I think that's a related question. If I'm remembering, last year we had about 60 or 58 eligible requests, and 25 of those went into a book. And so that would be about 50-50.
Cool. Okay. If an organization's wish is included in the catalog but is not funded, will the organization be able to apply the following year? Good question. I think currently, as it's worded in our guidelines right now, your organization would not be eligible to apply. Yeah, but that's the first time I'm seeing this question. And anything to add there, Sybil, Kathleen? Yeah, it seems like one of these good questions that we have yet to consider because we've never been confronted with the situation. But as the guidelines are written now, the answer would be no. Okay. If an item was included last year by another organization, is it best not to ask for it this year? I don't think so. Don't let that factor into your decision-making at all. Okay, and you answered this question about the percentage of wishes that end up in the book. Answer is 50-50. Okay, all right. And okay, I just see one more question. Can youth wages be subsidized as we have a workforce development component in our program? Participants work at local sports and entertainment venues. So unfortunately, no, wages are not eligible to be a wish. And I think, we would most likely, what's the word that I'm looking for? Translate subsidy to wages, sort of the same way that we treat wages. So unfortunately, no to that question. And unless I missed something, that is all the questions. Those are all the questions that I think we have. So we still have a few minutes, and I will stick around for 3 more minutes. But if you feel like you had your questions answered, I would just say thank you for joining us, and best of luck with the application process. If you have any questions that come up while you are completing your application, you have my email address, and please do not hesitate to reach out.
I'm gonna sign out, guys. Talk to you later.